Hello and welcome back to Strange Stories with the Seeker and the Skeptic. Today we are talking with retired paranormal investigator and counselor, author, and host of the YouTube show The Weird Walk Home, Tillie Treadwell. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Tillie.
Hello, my loves. Thank you so much for having me. It is a joy and a pleasure and an honor to be here. And yes, you've got that right. For the most part, I'm pretty retired now. But if retirement means that I get my own show and I get to work with some pretty interesting people, I think I can handle that.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's just shifting of directions. Yeah.
Indeed. And I like where this is going. So I think I'll hang around for a little bit.
Awesome. You said to us that you started experiencing the paranormal right as a small child. So what were some of those like early on experiences for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great question. The earliest experience that I can remember, and this has been with me almost my whole life, I would say that I was around 6 months old. And you know those, well, they're rather old-fashioned now, the baby carriers that have the handle that swings up
Yeah.
and they can be used as little rockers on the floor and then
Mhm.
seat belted into the car. So I was in one of those, and I was at a relative's house for some kind of holiday. I don't remember which holiday, but it was a giant family gathering, and I was on the floor in the carrier, just staring up at the kitchen ceiling fan. And I was wrapped in a nice, fluffy blue blanket, sucking on my pacifier, and just relaxing like little babies do, really. All of a sudden I was zipped up out of my physical body, and there was a massive moon faced woman essentially holding me. And this is the best description that I have in shortened words. However, the longer, more accurate description is that there was a giant moon with a slightly feminized face who had taken me up out of my carrier, and I was still wrapped in the nice blue blanket, but my pacifier was gone. And she was somehow, she didn't have arms, but she was somehow holding me to her and thanking me for coming to Earth in this lifetime and was asking me if there was anything that she could do to help me. And so I'm diagnosed as being highly neurodivergent, somewhat related to autism, you could say, but there's not an exact specific diagnosis. Well, now there are new studies coming out that seem to show that people who have certain types of autism and other neurodivergences may have memories going back all the way to infancy. That seems to be me. And um, as a baby, I didn't understand what was going on. So I just remember feeling quite intimidated and afraid, and I began to cry as hard as I could. So then I was just dropped back into my body instantaneously, and I continued to wail and to scream, essentially. And although my parents were there, the family was there, they had no idea what I was crying about. And I just remember crying until I cried myself to sleep. I was so intimidated. That was my first experience, as I recall it.
That's pretty incredible. Is this something that you have recalled like throughout your entire life, or was there a point in time where you remembered it?
No, it's something that has been with me since it
Hmm.
happened. And it's been perhaps the most unique and mysterious, that's a good word for it,
Hmm.
enigmatic experience that I've ever had. And I've never gotten any kind of answer as to who or what that might be. And I admit, maybe it was just the mind of a little child dreaming, and I've completely got it wrong. But regardless, ever since then, I've been fascinated with the moon and the night sky and the stars. And I hope that one day I get an answer.
Yeah, I hope so too. I mean, that's so interesting. So when you say moon face, like you mean actually like looked like the moon.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Wow. Okay.
Yes. Yes. And my understanding is that she was the spirit of
The
the
moon.
moon. Yeah. And I wish that I could get an answer. And if I do, I'll certainly let you know.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's really interesting too about like people with different neurodivergence remembering things from infancy. I've only heard of that one other time. It was actually a professor in grad school telling us about like her processing trauma from infancy, but like she was like 2 months old, and so that's really interesting that there's like that connection there.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that as time goes on, humankind will discover that infancy is maybe the most important stage of a person's life.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would agree with that. I mean, it's the foundation, right?
Yeah, precisely. It truly is. I've not yet met anyone who has any memories from infancy, but I think back very fondly on my super early years, and I miss what it was like to be that just empty, content vessel most of the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just the joy in the tiniest things, because everything is new. And I even have some memories of being right around that age, under a year old, and swinging outside underneath of a beautiful white dogwood tree in my grandma's backyard, and just enjoying the grass and the butterflies and the birds. And I think that maybe infancy is where a person's own development of the idea of heaven or hell may come from on a deep personal level, if that makes any kind of sense.
Oh, I'd love to hear more about that. Like, where does that kind of thought process come from for you?
Absolutely. Well, please keep in mind, my dear listeners and my friends here, all of what I'm about to say is just my personal experience, my personal opinion, my personal theories. I don't have any proof for the vast majority of the things that I say. And I encourage everyone to rub their own brain cells together and come up with their own conclusions, because I might be mistaken somehow, or I might be a little nutsy. So just everyone think for themselves, okay? So, with that disclaimer out of the way, I think that when we are infants here, that is when, outside of being extremely close to death, we are as close to our home realm as incarnately possible, really. And I think that the experience in infancy still rather mirrors where someone came from originally. And I think that that original home place and that reflection here in the early incarnate phase sticks with a person subconsciously for the rest of the lifetime. Uh, does that make sense? What would you think about a theory like that?
Yeah, that I mean, I definitely can see where you can get that, and as it's really easy to forget as humans that science is really only about 250 years old. Real
Hmm.
actual science. Like anything before Isaac Newton, for example, I don't know if you really can consider most of that to be science. Most of that was at best alchemy. And so we've been, studying the brain for, there's people who are alive today, just barely, but still, who, really hadn't really got an idea of what the brain actually does. And I think we're only about halfway there anyway. So, I mean, all the time you hear stories of little kids saying things that, you know, I remember when I was your grandfather and things like that. And it's like, and
Yeah.
you can tell when kids are being coached and when they're not. It does. Kids are really bad actors.
Yeah.
It's very obvious when they're being told to say a certain thing. I have memories of, and I probably am on the spectrum somewhere. I mean, the more they study the brain, the larger that spectrum seems to be. If you notice, um, I have memories that I've talked to my mother about, which at first she did not believe that I had, really, not in a negative way, just in a, how can you know this? You were one when this happened, or you were 10 months old when this happened. Like I could describe furniture from a specific event that I would never have seen past the age of one. And my family moved around a lot when I was a kid. We were always getting different furniture, getting different things, being in different places. But yeah, I have no problem at all with the idea that you remember something from when you were, a baby like that. I have memories myself.
Excellent. If you don't mind my curiosity, do you have any paranormal memories from when you were a baby?
Um, I think I kind of have half of a memory of something from when I was really small, because, and I don't even think I've talked to Brittany about this before, but I remember being a little kid, like a really little kid, thinking about people flying, like, without, like, not in an airplane, just like people who flew. And I don't know where I would have gotten the idea of that, when I was a little kid. My parents weren't really, TV people when I was younger, so like it wouldn't have been some TV show. Plus, this is the early 80s. There wasn't a whole lot of sci-fi stuff on anyway. So I don't know where I would have picked it up really. Um, you know, but I just had this idea that it was a thing that people did. And I feel like that there was a reason why I had that idea, but I couldn't tell you what it was. That's the closest thing, something from that young, that I could say. And even then, it could still just be a fragment of a dream. Who knows?
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you. Well, thank you very much for sharing.
When you were a kid, did you, when you started to get a little more older, and still, I'm assuming you were still experiencing some things here and there. How did the people in your life react to this?
Oh, that is a whole can of worms. Well, they reacted very, very poorly, except for my maternal grandmother, who I still miss to this day. Um, oh goodness. Well, I try not to talk too terribly much about my personal life because I think most people would find that boring. However, in the context of societal health and paranormal awareness, I will share some of these details gladly. My parents and the rest of my family, they at minimum thought that I was a really imaginative kid, and at most thought that I was, for lack of a better word, insane. So there was a lot of gaslighting that happened in my childhood about many things. And that also includes certain genetic differences that I've been diagnosed with. So my eye structure is a little bit different. I'm sure you can see that for yourselves. But then also, I'm deathly allergic to the sunlight, and I can't eat most foods due to a genetic form of what you could call diabetes, basically. So I have to be on a very strict diet and live a very careful lifestyle. My whole life until I went no contact with my family as a teenager and struck out on my own was full of just people telling me that I didn't see what I saw, heard what I did, sensed what I did, and that there's no way that I could be allergic to the sunlight. So, no, the sun doesn't hurt your skin. You're making that up. You're sick from something else. And so, even when they would take me to the doctors even would say that what I was saying sounded ridiculous, to quote one of the pediatricians. And they said that I was allergic to something I was eating, even though it was giving me, for example, respiratory issues. I was having trouble breathing. because that's part of the difference. Yeah,
Hmm.
it's very serious. So part of my work as an adult has been attempting to foster healthier people and couples and then families and then communities. And that's within the paranormal public realm and without it as well. Does that answer your question well enough?
Yeah, I definitely know how it feels to be younger and to be told that you're not going through what you're going through. And I'm sorry that you had to deal with that. I'm glad you were able to get those people out of your life. And it's always a positive step. Sometimes people look at it, that kind of stuff, in kind of a weird way. That just means that they haven't experienced those kind of things. But sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself is just to take somebody out of your life.
Oh yeah. And the thing was too, my my parents actually did experience some paranormal things and they would acknowledge it in the moment. And then I don't know if it frightened them or what it was, but then the next day they would be telling me, don't talk about that. No, that didn't happen. So there was a lot of back and forth with them. And that's something I don't tolerate at all anymore in people. Um, and I think that although I absolutely hated most of my upbringing, it taught me a lot and is allowing me to offer much more to other people than just, oh, she's a psychic, she's a medium, she's healer, whatever other titles people give me. So I'm grateful for it regardless, and I'm just trying to make the best of it while I'm here.
Thank you very much for sharing that story. And I think you're right in terms of it is helpful to talk about it in kind of a public way sometimes because so many kids are not believed. So many kids are gaslit, right? And I mean, even in my own family, my sister was experiencing paranormal things, and my parents, they've come around, right? But when she was little, they're like, nope, you're just watching too many scary stories or reading too many scary books. Did not believe her. And it caused her to shut down her mediumship abilities, and so it's such a common story that we're hearing from a lot of people. And so I'm hoping that there's people who are going to listen to this and be like, okay, if my kid comes to me and says they're experiencing this, like even if they're saying it's a monster under my bed, well, maybe I investigate a little bit. Maybe I keep an open mind.
Yes, bless you, darling. I agree 100%. And I'm so sorry that your sister went through that as well. Helping children is one of my biggest passions
Mm.
because they are so innocent and brand new to this world. To be honest, too, a lot of people don't know this, but little children's eyes, they haven't developed the thicker lens yet. And so they can see into more light spectrums than what the typical human adult being can. And I think that perhaps keeping that physical and maybe even that kind of quantum difference in mind for parents could be really helpful in resolving the issue and in validating their children, but also validating themselves because the parents, a lot of the time, they're not seeing anything. Or they might hear a mysterious noise, but they don't see anything to go with it, and they write it off. I don't think that that's anything wrong. I mean, I apologize. I don't think that there is anything wrong with that necessarily because that is their experience. And still, I think it is healthy to consider the child's experience as well. So, being a now retired paranormal investigator and now retired paranormal counselor, I used to work with families a lot. And most of the time, the truly negative, so called, non human people would leave the children alone. There's a general code, as it was explained to me, that you don't mess with children under a certain age unless there is an extreme situation. And that's for a whole different show. But helping the child to feel and be safe in a situation like that, I think is the most important paranormal lesson that parents can pass on to their offspring. Things like teaching them about the uses of sage and its limits, the uses of incense and its limitations as well. And then there's Florida water. There's the use of night lights and even TV light in some cases because the electrical field is interrupted. All of that, I think, could go quite a way in improving family structures and in helping children to begin to grow up and take responsibility for their own environments, if that makes sense.
Definitely.
So that's where I stand on this issue, and I want to make sure that everyone, from the very least of us to the very greatest of us, has hopefully at least somewhat of an equal chance at achieving health and happiness for a lifetime.
Yeah, I love it. And I'm a therapist as well, so I share a lot of those passions. And I'm just, when you said you were a paranormal counselor, I was like, oh my God, I need to know more. Like how did you kind of get started with that? Like what did your work, I mean, it sounds like you described a little bit of what your work was like, but just tell us more about being a paranormal counselor.
I think I can do that for you. So I became involved in the mental health field officially when I was just 19 years old. I can't give a ton of details for safety reasons, but I can tell you that I was, you could say, kind of recruited into a specialty clinical training program. I was supposed to be in that program for 4 years to get my first degree. And that was all in-house clinical hands-on training under licensed professionals, with my specialty being family systems and trauma recovery, lots of different trauma recovery. I made it a little bit past 2 years, and there, how should I say? So there's a misconception, as far as I understand, in the public, where they think that, oh, someone is rescued from an awful situation or they escape from an awful situation. They go into therapy and care, and then it's just like a nice, even, healing journey. That's really not the case for most people.
Yep.
So about 2 years in, I was having a really rough day. And at this center, everyone was supervised for the vast most part. It was rare for anyone to get any kind of alone time with any of the patients or the clinicians, just for safety reasons and for professionality's sake. I agree with that. I support it. But in the common room, we had, say, like foosball tables and pool tables. It was a little recreational space. And one of our clients was having a really, really tough day. And this person didn't like something that I said to them. And so picked up a chair off the floor and threw it at me really hard. And of course, that was terrifying for me. It's dangerous. And unfortunately, that person had to be removed from the program and from the center. And after the dust settled, my clinicians pulled me aside and they said, "Hey, Tillie, we know that you really love these people. We know that you really want to help. Unfortunately, with the severe types of trauma that these people have gone through, and that includes homelessness, self-prostitution, and lots of other things like drug abuse, familial abuse, incest, excuse me, I almost said incense. The healing journey for most of these people is minimal at the age and the stage that they're at. And we're lucky if 1 in 1,000 at most will make any meaningful change. And so we think that it might be good for you to, instead of continuing to try to encourage these people and follow the clinical program as we've laid it out, to essentially just let them mostly alone unless they ask for it. Which for me, that's not what I had been taught up until that point. And so they were teaching me about how to scale back for certain types of patients. And that went against the code that I had been taught up to that point. And because of the bombshell drop that most people don't recover meaningfully, not even halfway close, I resigned. I could not, I couldn't take that. I couldn't take the what I found to be confusing guidelines for some of the program, and then knowing that I was possibly risking my life each day for people who were too disconnected or too damaged or who didn't have empathy enough to understand what I was doing. I couldn't take it. It was way too stressful. So that was my 2-year stint as a clinical professional in training. Yeah. Does that answer your question well enough?
I mean, it kind of gives us the entry into like the, I guess, the mental health field, but how did you incorporate like being a paranormal counselor? Like how did that start for you, or what did that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, after I left the clinical field, I spent some time doing my own different things. And then I moved out of state and I decided that I was finally ready to follow my intuition and try to use some of what I had learned in a more spiritual way. I don't really know exactly how it happened internally. It just kind of did for me. That's kind of a lame answer, I feel like.
No. Yeah.
But that's the truth of it. I mean, there was no massive big spark or story. It was just a slow development over time. I became a local tarot reader and I gained a great reputation, had excellent clientele and a lot of them. And then people started asking me to do certain healing work and cleansing work in their homes. And then I ran into someone who I didn't know at the time. He was a paranormal investigator and he was also part of the Catholic Church exorcism team. And he invited me. He's like, "Hey, me and a bunch of my friends, we're also paranormal investigators and we want you to join us and bring your talents." And I was like, "Oh yeah, absolutely." I was still pretty young at this point. And he wound up taking me to the local Catholic church and we met with the father of the church. And I didn't know this. I didn't understand quite what was going on there because it was presented very differently. But that's okay. It worked out really nicely, I think, for me these days. But the father, he interviewed me and he's like, "Yeah, absolutely. We want her." And so he asked me formally to join. And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely. Rock on. Let's do this." So being part of the exorcism team, I was the frontline vetter, basically. We would go into people's houses. I would look for signs of fraud, mental illness, possible physical illness, symptoms causing these issues, paranormal issues, checking carbon monoxide detectors, all of that good stuff. And that is how I became a paranormal counselor. And of course, please mind, not licensed. I mean counselor as in I offer counseling.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I'm saddened by the experience that you had at where you were doing your training. It's so hopeless, and I don't feel as hopeless as a mental health professional. I mean, I agree in terms of like it is not a straight linear line, right? Like you're going to go through the trauma and then we're going to just heal it. Like there is the ups and the downs, but what I do think is, in my experience, the a lot of the traditional ways of therapy aren't effective for healing trauma,
Yeah,
and so I consider myself to be a holistic therapist. So I'm incorporating Reiki, I'm incorporating working with spiritual guides and energy and the Akashic records and stuff like that with a lot with the people who are open to it, that I work with. And I feel like when you're doing that work from a more spiritual or energetic place, profound healing can happen. Like I've seen it, I've experienced it myself. So I'm, like I said, I'm saddened that there's people in the field that kind of like see people as hopeless, but I feel like that experience you had propelled you into a different direction that maybe was more aligned for you. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And I certainly validate what you are saying and your experience, and I agree with your approach in the holistic sense.
Mm,
I think that my clinical trainers were doing the best that they knew how.
yeah, for
And
sure.
yeah, we didn't, because of funding reasons, we were not allowed to introduce anything else except for specialized trauma therapy that was recognized by like the government
Mm,
and certain types of investors. But I mean, if I could do it all again, I wouldn't change a thing, to be
hmm.
honest with you, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but I do hope that there's a new breed of counselor out there, and maybe that's you.
I think that there's more like I mean, a lot of the counselors or therapists that I know are expanding into wanting to do more holistic things. Um, and there's a model of therapy that it's called internal family systems. I don't know if, yeah, yeah. And to me, it's like this is what spiritual people call shadow work. And
Yep. Oh, yeah.
it's parts work, and it's my favorite model of therapy. I do it on myself, I do it with my clients. And it's again, it's like getting more to the spiritual and the energetic root, and profound healing can happen from that.
Yeah, and we did a fair amount of internal systems and family work and whatnot. The issue is that sometimes there are people who have been through so much horror
Mhm.
that, at least in my understanding, they have a chemical brain injury
Sure.
and
Yep.
they need such a fresh start that it would be infantilizing to get them
Hmm.
stable, because you'd have to put them in a facility where all of their needs are met, but where also certain boundaries are enforced. And that often just makes them even more upset.
Yeah.
And that's traumatizing for them as well.
Yeah.
And this is why a lot of them don't get the help that they need. And they continue on using whoever is around them and staying addicted to the drugs or the sex
Hmm.
or the lying, whatever the case may be, sometimes all of those things. And so for me, I really do think that some people are hopeless only in the case that they are so traumatized that they don't know how to use free will yet. And it might take a serious rock bottom for them to be able to finally make that choice.
Hmm.
Does that jive with you a little bit more?
Hmm.
Reading it like that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I definitely understand that. Yeah. And I mean, a lot of times it's like you have, like you said, you kind of have to hit that rock bottom, and it's more like you can't think your way out of it. It has to be like
Yeah.
healing the nervous system. And
Yes,
that is difficult work for sure.
it really is. And I still take on a few cases here and there if I really think that there is hope for
Hmm.
that person and that they are very serious and that they're not going to change their mind once their emotions change.
Hmm.
So, for a lot of human beings, when their feelings change, their integrity changes. That's a really serious problem, in my opinion and in
Yeah.
my experience. But I think, discovered a new tool that can help with this and directly help regulate not only the nervous system, but brain chemistry and
Hmm.
start to heal the the chemical injury in the brain. almost as soon as it's applied. And would you mind if I share this with you?
Please do. Yeah.
Okay. This is a tool that I have used in a few cases now already. It's a brand new thing, but the improvements that I have seen in some pretty serious cases are, to me, astounding. And I think that this tool needs to be investigated more for trauma healing and for implementation in standard therapeutic care. Have you ever heard of the LifeWave X39 patches?
No, I have not.
I regard them as being a type of semi-quantum healing tool. They are these little patches about this big, and they stick onto the skin. In the center of the patch, there is a type of woven, it looks like fabric, but it's a lot more complex than that. And it reflects certain types of light back into the body, deeply into the cells, which stimulates healing, and copper peptides and a bunch of other wonderful things. Using them, I have seen people who have some pretty serious mental health symptoms resolve those symptoms in a matter of weeks, such as obsessive thinking, even borderline schizophrenic type issues, personality disorder type issues that they cannot help that are caused by trauma, not just by genetics, but by straight up trauma, have been relieved by applying that patch every day. You can put it on the forehead, you can put it on the back of the neck, and there are a few other recommended places on the body. Now, I don't sell them myself. This is not an ad. I'm not endorsed by them or anything. This is all just my personal experience. So I think that maybe this is a tool that needs more attention, because not only is it fantastic for reducing inflammation, apparently, but I think it could make massive strides for personal healing in mental, emotional, and familial health. And please, no one sue me. Everything that I am saying is alleged. I don't have any proof. They do not endorse me. This is just what I have seen, and I could always be wrong. I could always be mistaken. I could always be nuts myself. Yeah.
Where did you learn about these?
Well, there was a lady who approached my husband and I one night when we were out at a local festival, and she just had the brightest, bounciest energy, despite being rather elderly, and she looked great. And then when I was able to see, as I believe, into her auric field, I was seeing these beautiful pearlescent white streaks, and I've never seen anything like that in anyone's auric field ever. And I asked her what her secret was. And then that's when she told us about that. And she said, I really like the way that you two look. I like the way that you're acting. I was coming over here to tell you about it anyways, because that's what my intuition was telling me to do. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So we're still in touch with her to this day. Oh, please continue.
I didn't mean to interrupt you. Is this something that you would need a prescription for? How does one acquire these things?
Nope. You would just go online, search X39 patches, and you'll be able to order. I do know that they prefer that you order on subscription packs, and they might be a bit costly for some, so it might be wise to bear that in mind. But no prescription is needed. They are not technically invasive. And they're painless to use too.
Awesome.
Well, just doing a quick Google search, I'm seeing the words stem cells, which is always interesting to me.
Yep.
I would be curious to see if there's been any studies based on that. Always curious about that kind of stuff.
Yeah. They have a bunch of videos and reviews that you could look at. And then I do think there have been studies about it. I haven't looked at the website in a while though, so there's always the chance that they've mixed things around or removed things, but I do remember seeing some studies listed on their pages.
Interesting. I definitely want to investigate that more.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I hope
thank
it
you for
helps.
sharing. Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Pleasure. Thank you for listening to my TED Talk.
Absolutely. When you were doing paranormal investigations, how often were the things that you were coming across? So it sounds like you were kind of going in and you were looking at the whole picture, seeing what
Yep.
other explanations they could be. So how often was it paranormal versus like how often did you find there was like some other explanation?
Yeah. Believe it or not, I would say about 75% of the time there was a paranormal element.
Okay.
But that was not the main story
Mm.
in my opinion. The main story was individual and familial health, mentally especially, and then the physical surroundings and physical health. Even the so-called demons that were there, they would tell me, "Hey, I am here or we are here because this person or this family is putting out the energy that we feed off of. It's nothing personal. If they want us to go away, they need to clean up what they have going on over here." I think that's perfectly fair. And so a lot of the time I would talk with these non-human people and they would tell me specifically what was going on with the family. And a lot of the time the family did not like that because the demon alleged demon would be telling me basically family secrets. And the few times that it really was not anything paranormal, there was something pretty significant going on with the mental health
Hmm.
and or with the physical health of the person and the environment that was causing that person to hallucinate.
I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense. Energetically speaking, if you're existing at this vibration where, you know, there's a lot of chaos or fighting or trauma happening, right? Like that is going to invite in energies that are aligned with that vibration. So that makes a lot of sense to me that it's a both and a lot of times.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And these non-human people treated me just fine. In my opinion, they
Mm,
were fine, decent people just needing to survive and eat like everyone else. And
mm,
a lot of the time, human beings get so angry and they call non-human people evil and whatnot if they don't align with the human agenda. But human beings are a lot of the time the biggest hypocrites and parasites I've ever met. So I think that if humankind can learn to take more responsibility for themselves and for their children, the environment, and for essentially their world, these non-human people wouldn't even be here anymore. And in my opinion, evil and good and all of that is just subjective. It's just purely based on someone's point of view. So we eat cows, we eat plants, those things can feel and think apparently. So they would probably think that human people and the people that eat them are evil. But does
mm-hmm.
that make us evil? No, we're just trying to survive
Yep.
like everyone else. Does that make sense?
It does. I mean, it's a really interesting and valuable perspective that I don't think a lot of people have, so I appreciate you sharing that with us. Like that does make right. We're all trying to survive. Every creature, every being, that is our primary focus.
Yeah. Do you think I'm evil yet?
No, not at all. Yeah, where do you either know or believe that these like non-human beings, where are they coming from?
Different vibrations, different
Okay.
dimensions, apparently. That is what every single one of them has told me.
Okay.
and that when they're not hanging out right beyond the veil to this world, apparently they are hiding under places like rugs and in cabinets and in closets, under the bed, behind the curtains, conserving their energy and just waiting. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
Yeah.
So you just recently had a book published. Tell us about the book.
I would be more than happy to do that. And in fact, I have a prop right here.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So I am an author for Zontar Press. I work with some awesome people like Tim Swartz from Ancient Aliens, Mark Ollie as well from Ancient Aliens, and lots of other cool shows. And we get together and we write about different things. So far, this year, our first major project was Weird Time, exploring the mysteries of time and space. I wrote a lot of more quantum based material and balanced it between the 3D human perspective and then the higher dimensional, perhaps non human perspectives. And then I threw in some pop culture references like Men in Black for good measure, because there's a really neat character in Men in Black 3 called Griffin. He's a unicorn. And in the Men in Black universe, he that means that he is a time traveling semi-humanoid person, and he's there kind of like a guardian angel to the main characters, but he's super quirky and he speaks really funny because he keeps talking about all these different timelines. It's I think it's interesting. And then I have a story in there about watching my cat crawl out of years dried thick pavement in front of my eyes. Weirdest experience by far I have ever seen. So that got its own portion. And I talk about apports, which are objects that just seem to randomly pop in to the universe or to our world. And I talk about a few other cases where other people have seen animals coming up out of the cement and seeing things appearing. And yeah, I think it's a lot of fun. I hope that people would like it. My co-authors, they wrote about homemade time machines, the history of those, and classic UFO missing time cases,
Mhm.
and people from Venus and how time might operate elsewhere on different planets, and then the history of time gods. And they've told personal stories in some cases. There's really a lot in there. It's a really, really nice, thick book. And if anyone would like to buy it, I would encourage you to please hop on over to Amazon. It is on sale right now for $18.95. And I think in most cases you can get it on Prime, so it's like 2 day shipping. Yeah.
That sounds very fascinating. The knowledge I have about like quantum physics and time is very little, but I have a lot of interest. Like I'm definitely been like talking to people and listening to things more about like timelines and shifting timelines and stuff like that. And so yeah, I'm very interested in that.
You may want to check it out. And if you do,
Definitely.
we would love to hear about what you think
Hmm.
about the book. And there's also, we just launched a brand new website about the book. People there will find exclusive resources, brand new original articles that myself and the other authors are writing. And there you can find all of our contact information. There's a lot going on there, and it's only going to get better over time. So maybe considering checking that out.
Absolutely. No,
All
we
right.
definitely
And what's
will.
that web address?
Oh, sure. Silly me. It's www.weirdtimebook.com.
Awesome. We'll put that in the show notes.
Yep.
Yes, sir. Please do. You're most welcome to do
Thank
that.
you. Yeah, that's very cool.
And then I'm working on another book as well. That's supposed to be coming out on October 1st.
Okay. What's that book about?
This book is called Tales from the Rift. It is a fictional collection of paranormal tales from my own twisted little mind. Some of them are horror stories, some of them are love stories, some of them are just mysterious little tales It takes place all around the calendar of the year, different holidays, different tales, different characters. And then there's a surprise at the end that people might want to keep an eye out for. This book is based off of my own experiences as a paranormal investigator and a paranormal counselor, as well as my lifetime of paranormal experiences with apparently non-human people, if I'm not totally bonkers. So it's written mostly from, I would say, the non-human point of view, several of them.
Very cool. I'm very interested in that, and we'll look for that in October.
Uh, and of course, as soon as I have that available, I'm going to be advertising it. If you keep an eye on my channel, I'm
Yep.
certain that you'll see it pop up. I have an illustrator who's making custom pictures for it right now, all
Wow.
hand drawn, and I'm so excited.
That
Yeah.
that is super exciting. Oh, I love it.
Would you like me to describe one of the critters for you? One of the non-human.
Sure. Absolutely.
So we're moving into summer, and uh, just between you and me, there is going to be a beach story about a being who lives in a hermit crab shell. And when he appears to human beings, he pops fingers out of the shell and crawls around with human fingers from inside the shell.
Awesome.
I mean, perhaps a little bit off the wall, but maybe people will like it.
Oh, there absolutely people will like it. No, there's I think a huge market for the paranormal, for the weird, and yeah, I love it.
I hope so, because these illustrations cost a pretty penny.
Yeah, I imagine they do. That's very cool though. I'm very excited for you.
Thank you, darling. I hope that
Yeah.
you'll enjoy my work.
Oh, I'm sure I will. Tell us about your show. You have a YouTube show, so tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, yeah, how could I forget? So, The Weird Walk Home is a joint venture between myself and my good pal, Tim R. Swartz. He is also the owner and the manager of Zontar Press, the publishing house. He and I do a lot of cool things together. And even just yesterday, we were on the Paracast together. So
Cool.
without Tim and without his support and his guidance moving into all of this, I never would have done it and the show wouldn't even be here. It is mostly a show that is focused on exploring the paranormal from a more quantum and story type of vantage point, you could say.
Mhm.
I include things, though, like integrity training and mental health and societal health and the exploration of traditions and cultures. And I talk about human society perhaps being a blended society. Maybe there are non-human people living amongst the human crowd that go unnoticed for whatever reason. And I talk about individuality, free will, the movement of time, philosophy as a whole. And everything that I do has some type of paranormal bend to it. So, oh, yes. And then coming up this autumn, I'm going to be introducing more horror content for Halloween. I think that'll appeal to a lot of people. And I have a brand new spin-off show coming next month with a new co-host. So that's going to be diving into the deeper, darker elements of human psychology and the paranormal. So as I like to say, please stay tuned because
Mhm.
new episodes are creeping your way in June.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah, you have a lot
That's
of
exciting.
really cool projects that you're working on. I love it.
Thank you. You had mentioned my projects. I simply wanted to add that I'm also a paranormal reporter for the International Dogman Project and the Quad Coalition of Sciences. And I've just been invited to begin writing for Steve Mera for Phenomena magazine and Outer Limits magazine with Chris Evers. Plus, I'm a brand new addition to the Project Doorway team. So that's with Steve Mera, Barry Fitzgerald, And I think my plate is full.
It sounds pretty full.
That's a lot of really exciting stuff.
Yep.
Very cool.
Thank you. I hope that it will be of use for people, and I hope that they will get some joy out of it as well. But I know that you guys are interviewing me. I would still like to know a little bit more about you, especially um, what type of counselor or therapist are you? And if you don't mind my curiosity, what sparked your passion for this field?
Yeah, so um I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I'm a Reiki master teacher and an Akashic Records practitioner. So, I have a private practice where people come to me with kind of the normal mental health stuff of trauma and anxiety and depression. But a lot of people, because I put it out there that I'm a holistic therapist, a lot of people come to me looking for more of that energetic and spiritual healing. And I mean, I grew up being an empath but not knowing what that was, just very sensitive and absorbing everybody else's emotions. So I think I was naturally inclined to go into, you know, a place where I could help people because I could feel everybody's pain and I'm like I want to do something about it. And after somebody told me in my 20s like you're an empath and I didn't know what that was, it kind that propelled me down the path of like, okay, like now I know this about myself. What do I do with that? And so that led to Reiki and that led to, just kind of my own like spiritual development.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of my story with it. Um, I just want to help people. Help people heal.
That, love that. Yeah. Okay. Very good.
Yeah.
John, how are you, if you don't mind my asking, how are you involved in all of this with the show? Are you also a counselor or any such thing? Or can you tell me more about you?
Oh yeah, I actually I'm a freelance editor. That's what I'm doing these days. I've
Cool.
kind of bounced around some stuff throughout my life. But as far as getting in like with this type of stuff, um, I have I had weird experiences my entire life until my mid-20s when I decided that I didn't want to have experiences anymore. So I kind of walked away for a very, very long time, and I blocked a bunch of stuff out. And then last summer, Brittany and I decided we were going to watch Twin Peaks and Hellier at the same time,
Oh,
and everything changed. Everything came back. Um, and here we are having this conversation.
yeah. We went on a trip to Tennessee and we were listening to another paranormal podcast and I kind of just had like a download of like, we should do this. And this is the name of it. And this is what we're gonna do. And it was very like quick from like that conversation to like we were starting to like recruit people to interview and stuff like that. So yeah, it was just kind of a thing that, we decided to go down this path. And it's been very interesting. I
Oh
love
yeah,
hearing people's stories. Jonathan is definitely more of the like researcher person. Like he's reading all the books, he's listening to all the podcasts, and I just want to hear people's stories and just kind of absorb it that way.
Oh, I love that. And I'm so happy for you both. My goodness. I think that's a sweet story. And I think that it's adorable that you're able to do these things together and have that shared passion and then share it with the world. And Brittany, I'm a lot like you. I think I love to hear other people's stories. A
Yeah.
lot of the time people think that I'm just constantly on because that's what I present. But my favorite thing to do is really just to read other people's work and just get them onto my show and ask them creative questions and see where they go.
Yeah, absolutely. Love it.
Well, I can't wait to dive more into that when I have you both back on my own channel here soon. So please expect lots of these.
Awesome. Very excited
looking
for
forward
that.
to
And
it.
looking forward to that. So Do you have like a website or social media or anything that people can follow you on?
Not too much, but there
Okay.
are a few things. Please do kindly search The Weird Walk Home on
Hmm.
YouTube, and then the Weird Time book website. You can keep up with some of my adventures there, but probably the best way to see what I'm up to would be to like the Weird Walk Home Facebook page, or you can join. That's right. I have Discord. I have a Discord as well. It's called the Moonlit Path.
Love it.
Yep. And that's really about it. I need to get a website together at some point, but just being so busy, unfortunately, I had to pick and choose projects and the website lost.
Yeah. Well, it
We're
seems like you're doing pretty good without it, so.
I think so, just a little.
yeah, we're trying to figure out how to pick and choose. Neither one of us is particularly good at that part.
Yeah, it's a struggle even for me because every different choice leads off into a completely different timeline in a
Yeah.
sense. At least that's what I think.
Yeah.
And I get that type of choice paralysis as well. So yeah, I feel your pain, my friends. I got
Thanks for
you.
Awesome.
talking with us.
Yes, this has been a great conversation. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Take care, okay? It was good talking
Well,
to you.
you as well, guys.
All right.
Talk to you later.
Bye. Thank you so much for being here. If you have a strange story you want to share with us, email us at seekerandskeptic@gmail.com. We look forward to talking to you soon.